On Monday, the City Council approved the next official plan. The vision for the next 30 years would support 298,000 residents and 150,000 jobs. But some aspect of the plan came under attack from the councillors due to increased pressure from some of the residents in their wards. One of the key changes in the official plan was to increase affordable housing units to 15% of total units built from the current 10%. However, during the discussion, Councillor Mike McCann criticized the changes. He said it will deter builders from coming to Barrie and result in increased home prices for the remaining 85% of the buyers.
Yeah, I do have an issue increasing from 10% to 15%. And I do realize that this council isn't really aligned with the way I'm thinking. And it's not that I don't want more affordable housing. That's quite the opposite. I definitely want more and want to help more. I just have a real issue with this model. And I guess the issue I have with this model is I understand our outcome. We want to have more people that can't afford properties, whatever income bracket they're in. Obviously, it's under a certain bracket where they need assistance for affordable housing. And I just don't know if this amendment from last week, to increase it from 10 to 15% is going to get us there. And I just felt strongly enough that I wanted to say my opinion. So if the mayor and council will give me maybe 3 or 4 minutes, I'll make it as quick as possible. Last week I made some, comments that I just look at things really practically, right? And I have a very clean line, and I do lots of research and talk to people that are actually, in the ground and actually spending money and actually involved in this on a day-to-day basis. And the fact of the matter is, if you've got a unit of 100 people, 100 units, and we're asking to go from 10 to 15%, there's a real issue that the builder is just going to take any extra cost that the city is going to demand that he spends, and he's going to put it on the other 85 units. And most likely those units are going to be family people. They're going to be residents in our city that are raising families, and they're in these units, and they're the ones that are going to get taxed. I don't mean taxed by the city. I mean have a higher cost to the units.
Mayor Jeff Lehman responded that there are various ways to make the units affordable, such as reducing the size compared to other units.
We're not taxing developers. The affordable housing target that goes into the official plan speaks to how many units you design to be at an affordable purchase price or an affordable rental price. And so it's about the size of them, it's about the type of them, it's about the range of community amenities and so forth. So I think it's very important that we don't conflate the two issues. One is, how do we fund social and supportive housing, which is a tax-funded initiative, or at least subsidized initiative. And yeah, it may be that we seek more ways for developer contributions, such as community benefit charges, to fund affordable housing. That was the discussion around cash in lieu last week. And that would be asking our development community, or requiring our development community, to contribute towards the cost of more affordable housing. But when we set a target in the official plan, what we're doing is we're saying, when you're designing your projects, make sure that 10 or 15% are at least targeting this purchase price or rental amount. And that can be accomplished in many cases through design. Now, the important thing here, and I think Councillor McCann is right to highlight, with the increase in the cost of construction and labor and everything else, it is very, very difficult to deliver a purchase unit for, say, $300,000 in the city of Barrie anymore. Dare I say, probably impossible, unless you've owned the land forever and you're looking at something like a very small condo or a tiny home or something like that. Fair point. And so there are going to need to be other mechanisms, and there may well need to be some efforts, especially in the new lands, the greenfield lands, to ensure that the kind of units that are developed come in at a more affordable price.
Many residents of Ward 1 have been opposing the developments in their neighborhoods. The new official plan has the minimum building requirement of 50 units per hectare in intensification corridor, Collectors Road, and arterial roads. Ward 1 Councillor Claire Riepma introduced a motion to reduce minimum requirements for collectors and arterial roads in neighborhoods.
I think we can all understand the difference between a collector street and an arterial,
Councillor Harvey and Kangal supported his amendment. Councillor Natalie Harris shared her personal experience about the difficulty in finding affordable places to live. She cautioned against changing specific building policies. Councillor Thompson also spoke against the amendment.
We're speaking about our affordable housing targets, and the OP is a massive plan, and all of us are, of course, looking at our individual wards and the city of Barrie as a collective as well, and addressing a lot of ward specific as well, issues and concern with density and height, etc. So my problem that I have, I'll tell you why. I have had a big change of heart towards I really need to support housing a lot more. I just moved. As you can see, this is a different background from what I was in before. And it was, I've posted it on social media, obviously not specifically where I've moved, but I've moved and it's a rental. And it was tricky to find and it's so expensive. And I've had a lot of people reach out to me prior to them knowing that I've moved as well into this new place, concerned as well about what I went through and how difficult it was to find something. It's barely affordable. And I live with another city employee. We make pretty good money and we're going to be really tight, like most people in the city of Barrie. So my concern with these types of amendments right now is that we are really kind of attacking already the possibility of really growing the number of units that we have in the city at so many different angles. And instead of having the staff come forward and they've presented that this is what their suggestion is with this official plan, and they've worked on this for so long, and this is how they see that we will reach these targets. So while I do understand, again, as a city councilor, Ward 6, I have lots of proposed developments, lots of big developments, lots of, we're Essa Road, and there's a lot of concerns with that. I really still feel that we need to grow so much. And I'm really worried that if we start to play around a little bit like too much with these specifics, won't that make builders maybe be a little bit more cautious of coming to Barrie as well and putting their investment here? I get what everybody is trying to say, and I know that this is complicated, it's a big situation, but that's what staff was here for, and I get it, council makes their voices as well, but this plan is because the city of Barrie is growing to this level and we really need this much.
City Chief Planner Michelle Banfield spoke in favor of the amendment. She said even if this amendment is passed, there are enough development opportunity to build more housing. The amendment did not pass.
There are areas in the official plan that have much higher intensification targets, much higher building heights, and those are the strategic growth areas, the urban growth center, the intensification corridors. We're talking about, through this amendment, Councillor Riepma is talking about the neighborhood areas, and he's talking about local and collector roads in the neighborhood area, collectors and arterials in the neighborhood area. And the neighborhood area in the plan is the area that we say we are expecting, yes, intensification, but more modest intensification. And so the density, by removing the density, again, it's loose language in the first place. So it should be a minimum. And Councillor Riepma and I, when we were talking about it, we're saying that in the neighborhood area, that gentle intensification could look like small singles, or it could look like semi-detached structures. It doesn't automatically have to go to townhouses. And so that's really where this proposed amendment came from, was to recognize that there still may be intensification, but it may not automatically go to the townhouse built form or a low-rise apartment built form. And again, it's very specific to these road classifications. So rest assured, even with this amendment, there are many areas still in the city of Barrie that can accommodate intensification, higher densities, higher built forms, even with this amendment.
Councillor Gary Harvey introduced a few more amendments aimed at reducing density in neighborhoods and greenfield areas.
Unless otherwise specified in this plan, development on lands designated neighborhood area shall be kept to 3 stories or less unless otherwise specified in the zoning bylaw, and in which case shall be no more than 4 stories.
Only Keenan Alvin and Natalie Harris opposed the amendment that will put limits on the number of floors to 3 in neighborhoods.
New development in the designated greenfield areas, as shown by the phasing plan on Appendix 2, may be permitted up to 12 stories where 1. The lands are comprehensively planned through an official plan amendment, a draft plan of subdivision, a draft plan of condominium, or a secondary plan to accommodate buildings of up to 12 stories. 2. The lands front onto and are oriented towards an arterial or collector street as identified in map 4B, or are accessed by a private road that is connected to an arterial or collector street. 3. Appropriate transitions from lands planned for and occupied by ground-related built forms can be achieved as per Section 3 policies of this plan. And 4. Servicing availability can be confirmed by the city.
While the other amendment limiting the total number of floors to 12 in greenfield areas was unanimously approved.
Yeah, I do want to maybe make some comments on this. I will be supportive, but I did want to maybe just echo and reframe my comments from last week. I do have an issue increasing from 10% to 15%. And I do realize that this council isn't really aligned with the way I'm thinking. And it's not that I don't want more affordable housing. That's quite the opposite. I definitely want more and want to help more. I just have a real issue with this model. And I guess the issue I have with this model is I understand our outcome. We want to have more people that can afford properties, whatever income bracket they're in. Obviously, it's under a certain bracket where they need assistance for affordable housing. And I just don't know if this amendment from last week, to increase it from 10 to 15% is going to get us there. And I just felt strongly enough that I wanted to say my opinion. So if the mayor and council will give me maybe 3 or 4 minutes, I'll make it as quick as possible. Last week I made some, comments that I just look at things really practically, right? And I have a very clean line, and I do lots of research and talk to people that are actually, in the ground and actually spending money and actually involved in this on a day-to-day basis. And the fact of the matter is, if you've got a unit of 100 people, 100 units, and we're asking to go from 10 to 15%, there's a real issue that the builder is just going to take any extra cost that the city is going to demand that he spends, and he's going to put it on the other 85 units. And most likely those units are going to be family people. They're going to be residents in our city that are raising families, and they're in these units, and they're the ones that are going to get taxed. I don't mean taxed by the city. I mean have a higher cost to the units, and that is an experience that is happening across the country. Secondly, we're going to have these extra units that are going to be available, and we don't have a guarantee that the people that we want to actually be in these units are actually going to be able to be in these units, because we have no system in place where we can track this and we can regulate this, where we can have these people in these units, right? And so that is a big concern to me. And I think everybody on this council wants to do 10 times more than we are doing, but this is an issue that definitely needs to be dealt with higher governments, right? I don't believe that we're going to get where we want to go with this amendment. And so I just wanted to reiterate, that right now we're talking about builders. And if we can't attract builders to our city, then we're not building any units. So if we keep on putting more restriction and making it more expensive for the developers and the builders to build in this city, they're just not going to build in Barrie. They're going to go to many other cities that are a half an hour away from Barrie and build where other communities, other councillors are not putting so much expense and maybe red tape towards them developing in Barrie. And I said this last week, I'll say it again. Builders right now, nobody knows what the market's going to be, right? We have new Canadians coming into our country that most likely will keep the cost of housing up, right? So that's, as a business case, a great thing. Maybe not so great for affordable housing. Building costs, they've been up, I believe, 20%, maybe hovering on 23%. There's no horizon that says that they're actually going to come down. Everyone speculates that they have to come down, but no one knows actually when. And if you just look at supply chain, if you look at how we're getting our materials in, that doesn't seem to be something that's going to happen in the near future. And then obviously labor cost. I think all sectors across all markets in Canada are having an issue with labor. So those three are major components when you're building homes and developing. And now we're asked to spend more money when there isn't a guarantee. Because if there was a guarantee, why not increase it from 15% to 25% or 50%? I'd be fully supportive of that if we knew that this model actually worked. I've talked to senior staff and I've gone back and forth and I've just said, okay, I'm going to get out of the way and move forward for this process. We've got 15%, for medium to high density projects. It's a 15% target for the whole community. So, Mayor Lehman and his affordable task force hopefully will maybe spread some of that cost out throughout the whole city. So we're not just hitting the new development that can go into maybe the tiny home project that we may or may not move forward. Some of the other subsidized products that we're doing, we'll maybe spread that out. So I don't know what that answer is. It was one of the big reasons why I'm not holding up my flag and trying to persuade this council not to go from 10 to 15 or 15 to 10 or 10 to 15. And I guess, maybe this is an ask of staff, Mayor Lehman. Would I ask this now because it's pertinent to what we're talking about now, or would I ask this in inquiries to get some information from staff about this specific topic?
Sorry, did you have a question of staff?
Yeah, my question to you is for protocol. I'd like staff to investigate and give us back some information pertained exactly to this subject. So I'm just curious. Ask now, or do I ask in inquiries?
Well, if they're able to answer it now, you can ask a question now. Go ahead.
They absolutely won't be able to answer it now. They're going to need a couple of weeks to generate this information for me. So let me ask, and then if you don't mind, it'll be 2 minutes if you don't mind.
Okay, you're at the 5 minutes you get to speak at council. You can certainly ask a question, Councillor McCann, but if I would just remind you as well, if you want to give direction to staff, it has to be by way of an amendment. So go ahead.
I would just maybe like to ask senior staff if they do have this answer, or if they could get back, if they could, come back, is that, I was just thinking the only control that we have in this process is our process at City Hall, right? And we've got so many approved applications, so many units that actually should be approved and actually started construction that aren't. And I want to know what that number is, right? Is it 500? Is it 5,000? So what is that number? Because quite frankly, they're actually a big part of the problem here I look at, right? And if they're not building, right, and they're holding on to their land, then really should we be looking at some of the permits that we have towards these lands, and should we be putting an amendment forward or an discussion forward to have discussion to put a little pressure to build or to take permits away? So I guess the question I have for staff, if they can answer now, is how many do we have in the pipeline? You know, why? And then maybe the basic question is, why are these builders and developers not building?
Oddly enough, we do have the answer to that because I asked for it about a month ago in conjunction with the province's housing task force. It's really funny you're asking that question, Councillor McCann, because I'm going to be using that number tomorrow morning in a couple of calls. Mr. Prowse, I think, knows it off by heart now because we've been talking about it, but Ms. Banfield, I don't know if you want to answer, if you've got the detail on that. Units approved but not built, and then the important color is when they were approved, because to be fair, some just got planning approval and it's not a surprise. They wouldn't have pulled a building permit yet. So Ms. Banfield.
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor McCann, the round number that I would say is around 19,000 units that are approved. As you said, Mayor Lehman, definitely a full range of timing on that. But it's about 19,000 units that are approved but have not been built.
Ms. Banfield, can you indicate how many of those are more than the approval is more than 3 years old, as in approved in 2018 or earlier, or 2019 and earlier, perhaps?
Mayor Lehman, I don't have that number right at my fingertips, but as I said, the way we look at it as well, in particular as it relates to population targets, is we average about 2.7 people per unit. And so if these 19,000 units were occupied, it would be around an additional 53,000 people living in the city of Barrie.
Yeah, it's an enormous number. I guess what I'm trying to get at is how many of those 19,000 are being held off the market because the developer did not proceed to build, and how many have every intention of building, and it's just because, you know, they're not. They got the planning approval late last year, and you know, in the due course of business, they will be pulling their permits. So that might be some color we can add to that answer. But go ahead, Councillor McCann.
No, that's sorry, I'm a little surprised that I got the answer. I didn't expect to get it. So I'm just trying to process maybe next questions that I have, and I guess maybe those questions. Of those 19,000 units, which is just astonishing, I think all of council would agree. How many of those are affordable? Like, how many of those are targeted for affordability?
Yeah, great question. It would not be very many at all. Ms. Banfield, any sense?
Through you, Mayor Lehman, I do not at this point, but I could certainly do some of that research and do an email to council.
And just so my math is aligned, it would probably be 10% if history repeated itself. Would I be close, or would that be a number that you wouldn't want to speculate?
Great question, Ms. Banfield. Have we come close to that 10% number in previous approvals?
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor McCann, we certainly have, and we have come close to that target. It's more about the units actually becoming turnkey, if you will. Actual people, and that's what we report on every year in the annual affordable housing. We actually get to the turnkey part of it as opposed to the pipeline part, if that makes sense to council.
Yeah, Mayor Lehman, I appreciate. I don't have many other questions or follow-ups because I wasn't expecting to get those answers tonight. But I think obviously you're, if you don't mind, I think it'd be helpful if you could maybe give a little color on what you're doing tomorrow. Like, I mean, are you speaking on behalf of?
Sure. So Ontario's big city mayors are having a series of meetings as well with AMO to understand the report from the province's housing task force. It's 55 recommendations. We want to give the government our view on those recommendations on behalf of the municipal sector, and in my case, directly on behalf of the 29 largest cities in the province. So we're working on that response, and the issue of units approved but not built is one that we've been raising since the beginning, because, you know, I think, as we've said back to the government and the Premier, yes, municipal approvals can always be improved. There are always efforts we can make, but we have this huge chunk of units that have been approved that haven't been built. So what's going on there? If it's not the planning process that's keeping those units off the market, what is it? And we have some experience with that in Barrie. Just to give you a sense, in the city of Toronto, there are 70,000 units approved but not built, and that's not including the ones in the last year. So those are, you know, stale dated, and that's they're being kept off the market for one reason or another. And so that issue is repeated to different degrees in cities across Ontario. And we are trying to get to the bottom of that as well, and working with the development industry and the construction sector to understand if there are things municipalities can do to help with building permits. And you know, without sort of a spoiler alert here, I think the short answer is there aren't, like many thorny issues, it's not a simple, easy answer. There's a bunch of different issues. Some have very like water table issues, hydrogeology issues, soils issues that come up after the planning approval, but during the building planning process or permitting process. Others, it's a change in financing, it's a change in project ownership, it's whatever reason related to the developer themselves. So stay tuned. We hope to have more to say on that issue. But I would say that back to the issue that's on the floor, the affordable housing target, I don't think it's the same issue when it comes to subsidized and supportive housing projects as what we're talking about here, which is what percentage of the units in a proposed development are considered affordable. The supportive and you know, the subsidized projects you talked about, Councillor McCann, they proceed if the organization that's going to build them is able to. It's not really a systems issue. It's more about the capacity of the charity or the development, the not-for-profit developer or the social housing, whoever it is, right? It's less about a planning policy issue when it comes to those projects. On the affordable housing target, it may well be more of a systems issue, but hopefully that gives you some color.
It does, and I appreciate that, Mayor Lehman. And I guess just one question keeps on pulsating in my brain here, and hopefully that you or maybe some of your staff that are coming with you tomorrow would be able to identify, you know, of the 29 cities that are represented in Ontario's big city, like what are their numbers? You said Toronto's at, I think, 70 or 80,000. I mean, I'd love to know that information. Are our builders telling us they're not building in Barrie because there's too much red tape in the cost? Or are they full of malarkey because every city has the same type of issue we have? That would be helpful as a councillor when talking to developers and builders, right?
Sure.
So that, I mean, I'd love that information, and I know you're coming back in a few weeks with your housing affordability task force, I believe. Yes, no?
That's just the Barrie task force, not the provincial one.
No, I realize that, but I just thought that would be
in terms of getting the information, sure.
Yeah, to have that night.
Yeah.
Like let's get this all in the pot and let's talk about it so we're not, you know, all over the map. That would help me out anyways. And I guess maybe the last question I have is, do we have any updates on the new Canadians that are coming into our country? And I believe that this will have a major impact on our supply of housing. And at last I heard, were we up to 600,000 new Canadians coming into our country in the next 9 months? And I don't need the answer now. I mean, I'm pretty sure I can go to probably Stats Canada and get that myself. But I mean, just in dialogue, Mayor Lehman, that would be useful to know. And are they migrating to Barrie? Are they staying in the GTA? Where would they be, maybe from the Premier, where would they be identified as going?
Ms. Banfield?
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor McCann, I can certainly look into that. I don't have anything other than, I mean, Council heard from Dr. Mike Moffat, you know, not that long ago, and he had his speculation from the research that he's done. Beyond that, I don't have anything else to offer, but with the census being, the census information is coming out little by little each month in 2022. There may be some more data that we're able to share with council at that time.
Right. And, you know, I'll just disclose that I've got a really close relationship with the Premier's office, and I know I've been talks with them about this. I'll bring that information back in 2-3 weeks, Mayor Lehman. And I just think that let's get it all on the table and let's try to move this mountain. Would be great. So supportive. Thank you, Council and Mayor Lehman, for letting me go on a little bit, but this definitely is an issue that is close to my heart. And like everyone else, we want to see real change. And it's just one of the most frustrating subjects as a council member that I've had, because I really feel that this is a higher government issue and not municipal. And with our county, and last but not least, I hope that we're putting extreme pressure on our county to come up with a solution as well. So thank you.
Notwithstanding, we already voted. Any other comments on section A? Okay, just a couple of things, though, I think I do need to address in that Councillor McCann, and in that back and forth discussion there. The immigration targets, of course, are set federally. Premier's office may be able to give you information on what the federal government's plans are, but that it is the federal government that makes those decisions. When it comes to affordable housing, though, and I think on the issue that's on the floor, and this is really important to understand, we're not taxing developers. The affordable housing target that goes into the official plan speaks to how many units you design to be at an affordable purchase price or an affordable rental price. And so it's about the size of them, it's about the type of them, it's about the range of community amenities and so forth. So I think it's very important that we don't conflate the two issues. One is, how do we fund social and supportive housing, which is a tax-funded initiative, or at least subsidized initiative. And yeah, it may be that we seek more ways for developer contributions, such as community benefit charges, to fund affordable housing. That was the discussion around cash in lieu last week. And that would be asking our development community, or requiring our development community, to contribute towards the cost of more affordable housing. But when we set a target in the official plan, what we're doing is we're saying, when you're designing your projects, make sure that 10 or 15% are at least targeting this purchase price or rental amount. And that can be accomplished in many cases through design. Now, the important thing here, and I think Councillor McCann is right to highlight, with the increase in the cost of construction and labor and everything else, it is very, very difficult to deliver a purchase unit for, say, $300,000 in the city of Barrie anymore. Dare I say, probably impossible, unless you've owned the land forever and you're looking at something like a very small condo or a tiny home or something like that. Fair point. And so there are going to need to be other mechanisms, and there may well need to be some efforts, especially in the new lands, the greenfield lands, to ensure that the kind of units that are developed come in at a more affordable price. I think the other issue, Councillor McCann's right, is there's no way to ensure that these units stay affordable. That's something other members of council have talked about during the discussion. But the point, and I think Councillor Aylwin made the point last week, if you flip it around and say, we're saying 85% are not going to be subject to this affordability target. And since the affordability target is really mid-market, we are talking about 85% of the units being on the much more expensive side. And so I think we have to make a choice when we're a council to say that we're going to create a city where people of all income levels can afford to rent and ultimately, hopefully, own a place and be part of our city. And if you make less money in your job because you're at an entry level, or you're working in a lower wage profession, or whatever that might be, you don't have to live outside of Barrie because that's all you can afford. That's not the kind of city I think we want to build. And these targets are part of ensuring that that isn't the case, because they're going forward, right? So I think we're all supportive of this. If you're not supportive of it, vote against the amendment or the section of the report. But I do believe these targets in the official plan are important, especially at this very difficult time in our housing situation. So we'll call a question on section A. Those in favor of section A, please indicate. I am as well, so that's unanimous by those voting. Thank you, members of council. Deputy Mayor Ward, section B, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that section B of the Planning Committee report dated February 2022 is circulated be adopted.
Thank you. It's moved by Deputy Mayor Ward, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that section B of the Planning Committee report dated February 8th, 2022 is circulated be adopted. This is the balance of the official plan and municipal comprehensive review. I believe there are a few amendments being proposed by members of council. The first one I've seen is Councillor Riepma's. Yes, go ahead, Councillor Riepma.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Kongo, that motion 22P-007 of section B of the Planning Committee report dated February the 8th, 2022 is circulated be amended by adding the following to paragraph 1. That section 2.6.13 development policy paragraph G to delete the following, and then in quotation marks, on streets classified on map 4B as collector or arterial street or fronting.
Okay, we have an amendment moved by Councillor Riepma, seconded by Councillor Kongo, that motion 22P-07 of section B of the Planning Committee report as circulated be amended by adding the following to paragraph 1, that section 2613 development policies paragraph G, that we delete the following words, on streets classified as map 4B, on map 4B as collector or arterial streets or fronting. Councillor Riepma, would you care to explain what that one means?
Yes.
Sorry, Councillor Morales, is that a declaration on this one? Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. I'd like to declare a real and direct pecuniary interest on this amendment. The street Duckworth on which my family and I own property is currently an intensification corridor in the existing OP, but proposed as an arterial in the draft OP as written by staff. The amendment would see the removal of the minimum density recommended for arterials if this amendment were to pass, therefore having a real and direct impact on my family and I financially. As such, I will be removing myself from this vote for as long as the amendment has a real and direct financial impact on my family and I.
Okay, thanks, Madam Clerk. Has Councillor Morales's conflict been recorded?
Yes, Mayor Lehman, it has.
Thank you very much. Councillor Riepma, do you want to introduce and explain your amendment? Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'm indebted to Ms. Banfield and the staff who worked with me on this, this matter. I think we can all understand the difference between a collector street and an arterial and our intensification corridors. The official plan sets up those three categories. So a collector street is something like we have in Ward 1, Steel Street, for example. 2 lanes, it's residential all the way. Collector is like Blake Street. And then we have, the collector is like Steel Street, arterial is Blake, for example, or Ferndale and other areas of the city. And then we have our 3 intensification corridors, Bayfield, Essa, and Young, basically. And I think, you know, we can all appreciate what that those streets are 3 different categories. And what this amendment does is the existing official plan, the way it's drafted, it says that the minimum density on all 3 of those streets is exactly the same. It's 50 units per hectare. And the intention of this application or this amendment is to remove that minimum requirement from the collectors and arterials, but leave it for the intensification corridors, because that's where we really initially want to drive intensification. Now, that doesn't mean that intensification wouldn't happen on arterials or collectors. We have lots of other policies in the plan that encourage intensification on those streets. but those policies tend to be much more oriented towards urban design, so that there's much more of a intent to sort of integrate any intensification on those streets. And of course, you can appreciate that if there's a minimum requirement on those streets of 50 units per hectare, you may not be able to integrate that development properly into the street, because you've already tied your hands with saying it's got to be at 50 units per hectare. So what this amendment does is it removes that requirement from collectors and arterials, without necessarily requiring them, that they would not be permitted to intensify. I wanted to also just talk a minute about the affordability part of it, because I think that might be a question in somebody's mind, is that won't that affect our intention to increase affordability? And I think the answer is no. And I think you expressed it just a few minutes ago, very eloquently, that it is the affordability has a lot to do with the design of the unit itself. And so by amending the policy the way we're suggesting, is that the locations that are suitable for higher densities will stay suitable. The sites that are not suitable will still be unsuitable. This just helps to clarify what we intend to do. And I think that it helps to tell the development industry, the building industry, where they can get an approval reasonably quickly and under what circumstances, and where they cannot. And I think that is very, very useful for the industry as well as for the neighborhoods that are involved in this. So thank you very much, and happy to answer any more questions.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Riepma. On the amendment, Councillor Natalie Harris, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. So this is interesting. We're speaking about our affordable housing targets, and that the OP is a massive plan, and all of us are, of course, looking at our individual wards and the city of Barrie as a collective as well, and addressing a lot of ward specific as well, issues and concern with density and height, etc. So my problem that I have, I'll tell you why. I have had a big change of heart towards, I really need to support housing a lot more. I just moved. As you can see, this is a different background from what I was in before. And it was, I've posted it on social media, obviously not specifically where I've moved, but I've moved and it's a rental. And it was tricky to find, and it's so expensive. And I've had a lot of people reach out to me prior to them knowing that I've moved as well into this new place, concerned as well about what I went through and how difficult it was to find something. It's barely affordable. And I live with another city employee. We make pretty good money, and we are going to be really tight, like most people in the city of Barrie. So my concern with these types of amendments right now is that we are really kind of attacking already the possibility of really growing the number of units that we have in the city at so many different angles. And instead of having the staff come forward, and they've presented that this is what their suggestion is with this official plan, and they've worked on this for so long, and this is how they see that we will reach these targets. So while I do understand, again, as a city councilor, Ward 6, I have lots of proposed developments, lots of big developments, lots of, we're ESSA Road, and there's a lot of concerns with that. I really still feel that we need to grow so much. And I'm I'm really worried that if we start to play around a little bit like too much with these specifics, won't that make builders maybe be a little bit more cautious of coming to Barrie as well and putting their investment here? I get what everybody is trying to say, and I know that this is complicated, it's a big situation, but that's what staff was here for. And I get it, council makes their voices as well, but this plan is because the city of Barrie is growing to this level and we really need this much. So that's how I feel, and I'll just leave it at that.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. On others on the amendment, Councillor Harvey, then Councillor Kungl.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. I will support this. Councillor Riepma highlighted a good point here that there is a significant difference between an intensification corridor, arterial, and a collector, and they should not be treated the same. And like, I mean, this still doesn't mean that we won't see these developments come in at 50 units per hectare or greater in the arterials or the collectors. However, it provides more flexibility opposed to setting that minimum target, because not every area is going to be suitable for that high of a density. Every situation is different, and this gives our staff and also gives council a little bit more flexibility to be able to approve things when it's appropriate in those areas. And I'll be quite honest with you, I was astounded when I heard about the volume of permits that are just sitting that haven't been built. 19,000 is a crazy number when you consider the population of the city of Barrie and the size of our city in comparison to, let's say, 70,000 or 75,000 that it was for a massive city the size of Toronto. It just goes to show you, this has nothing to do with the planning department or council not approving stuff. I have no idea what the issue is here, but obviously the builders aren't building for some reason. And that's where we really need to start putting some control measures in place with these applications to ensure that there's some reasonable expiry dates, so that way this stuff does get built, because we shouldn't be in the situation where we are. But I do support this because it does provide a little bit more flexibility opposed to setting a minimum target as high as it is, especially on a collector road.
Thanks, Councillor Harvey. And just a reminder to members of council, we're at council, so you can speak once for up to 5 minutes to each amendment that's on the floor, and then I will call the question. Next, I have Councillor Kungl.
Thanks, through you, Mayor Lehman, to perhaps Ms. Banfield. So I did support this, and while I'm clearly on the housing affordability task group and whatnot, I do see the blend between how we are clear with residents around intention for infill and development, and do want to see that infill be maximized where appropriate, but also around clarifying to residents what you can expect, at least around what may or may not come to council within arterial and collector roads. So I did have the benefit of having a great conversation with Ms. Banfield. I'm comfortable supporting this, and I don't believe it will negatively affect it. I think it's just around clarity around where we're directing certain types of degrees of intensification. Happy to continue to hear comments on that, but I guess I'll just, without putting Ms. Banfield on the spot too much, I'll just create an avenue to say, are there any concerns that you see with respect to the work staff have done to this actually being a concern around development on a go forward with the intentions around, trying to see good use of available lands for density where we've identified intensification corridors.
Ms. Banfield.
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Kungl. So there are areas in the official plan that have much higher intensification targets, much higher building heights, and those are the strategic growth areas, the urban growth center, the intensification corridors. We're talking about, through this amendment, Councillor Riepma is talking about the neighborhood areas, and he's talking about local and collector roads in the neighborhood area, collectors and arterials in the neighborhood area. And the neighborhood area in the plan is the area that we say we are expecting, yes, intensification, but more modest intensification. And so the density, by removing the density, again, it's loose language in the first place. So it should be a minimum. And Councillor Riepma and I, when we were talking about it, we're saying that in the neighborhood area, that gentle intensification could look like small singles, or it could look like semi-detached structures. It doesn't automatically have to go to townhouses. And so that's really where this proposed amendment came from, was to recognize that there still may be intensification, but it may not automatically go to the townhouse built form or a low-rise apartment built form. And again, it's very specific to these road classifications. So rest assured, even with this amendment, there are many areas still in the city of Barrie that can accommodate intensification, higher densities, higher built forms, even with this amendment.
Thank you for that, Ms. Banfield. And oh, yeah, I'll hold it there. I think my next one might come up later. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Congo. Councillor Thompson.
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to staff. Ms. Banfield, with that answer, so we've worked on the OP for 4 years, and you're saying that the intensification corridors, the young and that, are the same as these streets. Is that correct?
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Thompson, throughout the official plan, we have referenced local roads, collector roads, arterials, and intensification corridors. So this particular policy did clump together collectors, arterials, and intensification as it relates to a proposed minimum density. This is just this one particular policy. There are other policies in the plan that differentiate the density and the height along those local collector, arterial, and intensification corridors.
So do you think we've missed the opportunity of increasing the intensification corridors? If we've lumped them all together, it's obvious that staff's recommendations were to have this intensification per hectare. So, and now we're amending it. It just seems that we're trying to piecemeal things, where I think that if we're gonna take from one, we have to increase the other. And I don't know why staff would have lumped them all together, as we've seen some developments that hit these targets. Councillor Aylwin is seeing it at almost every proposal, so it's just, I don't feel comfortable saying we're going to do this on a blanket, but some other ward councillors are going to feel it because we've got to make up. But I think the official plan over 4 years, I can't see, like, it seems like this was an easy path to lump them all together. But if we were concerned about you're saying that you don't have any concerns with this amendment, then I don't know why staff wouldn't recognize that throughout this 4 years. And I understand that staff have to do at the direction of council, but I just think it was a missed opportunity that if you take from one, you got to give the other to keep meeting our targets. So I'll listen for more comments, but at this time, I probably I'm finding it a little difficult to support this amendment.
Thanks, Councillor Thompson. Anyone else with comments on the amendment? Councillor Jim Harris.
Great, thank you, Mayor Lehman. Maybe through you to Ms. Banfield, and Councillor Thompson's question gave me something to think about. I was wondering, with this particular reduction in the density, would this then open the door to the possibility of similar height reductions on these type of roads based on a lesser density? And that's, sorry, through you, Mayor Lehman, to Ms. Banfield, sorry.
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Jim Harris. So this was an encouraging policy to give some direction to what the minimum densities should be. and again, I just want to reiterate that this is specific to the neighborhood areas. So there are some properties that face onto, that might have a medium density designation or a high density designation. This remains valid only for the neighborhood area. And at this point, no, this amendment doesn't propose to change the height. But again, the height is also tied to, in the official plan, is tied to whether it's a local road, arterial, collector, or intensification corridor.
Okay, thank you. You may have asked it, but just so then there would be a correlation, or there wouldn't be a correlation to heights as it relates to this amendment on these type of roads?
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Jim Harris. No, there's no direct correlation to this amendment to what heights would be proposed.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other comments on the amendment? Councillor Elwin.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. I do have a question for Ms. Banfield first. We're talking about this section of the official plan, and I'm recognizing that in this section, it talks about transit supportive development, and that's the justification for this policy direction. Can you speak a bit more to that original justification, why staff were looking to encourage this type of density along these types of roads?
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Aylwin. Ultimately, it's good planning practice to have some critical mass along properties where they're serviced by public transit. We heard this comment from the public, and really the city wanting to shift away from being, car oriented. But again, it doesn't necessarily, this amendment wouldn't necessarily preclude that density from happening. Again, it's just, it's more about just, I guess, with the removal of these two road types would just be a little bit, provide a bit more flexibility for some of those lower intensification projects, again, in the neighborhood area on some of these smaller streets.
Thank you for that answer. So I won't be supporting this amendment, and for a couple of reasons. First of all, the fact that the policy, as it's written now, is about encouraging this type of density, and it isn't precluding less dense development along these corridors. I think that's a pretty good reason to not support this. It's good for us to encourage good planning policy, as our chief planner has just said. And my other reasons, affordability is actually down the list a bit for me on this. A bigger reason why I would oppose this, and why I think we should be encouraging transit supportive density, is we're in a climate crisis. And we know that our city's greenhouse gas emissions, 55% of those emissions come from personal vehicle use. So we have to transition, and we have to transition fast. And one way to do that is by encouraging more density in our communities, so that transit is more viable, and so that our communities become more walkable and more complete. So this is about encouraging a healthier community. It's not imposing intense development on these streets. It's not requiring intense development on these streets at all. It's about encouraging good planning policy and more sustainable development. So I can't possibly support this with our climate goals in mind. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Owen. Other comments on the amendment? Okay, just before I call the vote then, just a quick question, Ms. Banfield. Would the impact of the minimum density preclude somebody on a collector or arterial street from, say you've got a rundown bungalow and they wish to replace that with, say, a nice semi-detached. If it doesn't hit the minimum density target, would the policy that is being amended as written in the original OP, would it preclude the property owner from being able to do that without an official plan amendment?
To you, Mayor Lehman, apologies. No, it would not.
Okay, so the original policy, maybe just give a bit of clarity then on how the minimum density aspect would apply in these areas.
Well, again, Mayor Lehman, it does tie into a minimum density to be around a transit supportive number, should be, and that's exactly how the policy says, should be around 50 units per hectare. And again, that ties into, in particular, the neighborhood area and the size of the lots that we see there. So that really is the intent, was to say, if we want to get this transit-oriented density along these roads, it should be around this this density. And the whole idea was to provide some guidance, and it's more of an encouraging policy, to be honest, to encourage development to be at a transit supportive density.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. That was one of my concerns around the amendment. Okay, with that then, I will call the question. Those in favor of the amendment, please indicate. Opposed to the amendment? Okay, the amendment is defeated. Thanks for the discussion. The next one I have is Councillor Gary Harvey and seconded by Councillor Fungal, I think. Go ahead, Councillor Harvey.
Just a moment of indulgence there, Mayor Lehman. I'm just trying to get, because we had a slight variance in the wording here, so I'm just trying to get it back up. So I'll send it out to all members of council, just so that way they can see. There's just a few words that changed. Okay, so moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Kungle, that motion 22P007 of Section B of the Planning Committee report dated February 8th, 2022 as circulated, be amended by adding the following sections under paragraph 1. That in section 2.6.1.3 development policies, paragraph A, to delete and replace the following. Unless otherwise specified in this plan, development on lands designated neighborhood area shall be kept to 3 stories or less unless otherwise specified in the zoning bylaw, and in which case shall be no more than 4 stories. That the following paragraph be added to section 2.6.1.3 development policies. Section E, new development in the designated greenfield areas as shown by the phasing plan on Appendix 2, may be permitted up to 12 stories where, 1, the lands are comprehensively planned through an official plan amendment, a draft plan of subdivision, a draft plan of condominium, or a secondary plan to accommodate buildings of up to 12 stories. 2, the lands front onto and are oriented towards an arterial or collector street as identified in map 4B, or are accessed by a private road that is connected to an arterial or collector street. 3, appropriate transitions from lands planned for and occupied by ground-related built forms can be achieved as per section 3 policies of this plan. And 4, servicing availability can be confirmed by the city.
Okay, we have an amendment moved by Councillor Harvey, seconded by Councillor Kungle. That the OP motion be amended by adding the following sections in paragraph 1. That in section 2613 development policies, paragraph A, delete and replace with the following, unless otherwise specified in this plan, development on lands designated neighborhood area shall be kept to 3 stories or less unless otherwise specified in the zoning bylaw, and in which case it shall be no more than 4 stories. Secondly, that the following paragraph be added to the same section, 2613, new development, and it would be a paragraph E. New development in the designated greenfield areas, as shown by the phasing plan on Appendix 2, may be permitted up to 12 stories, where 1, the lands are comprehensively planned through an OPA, draft plan of subdivision, a draft plan of condominium, or a secondary plan to accommodate buildings of up to 12 stories. 2, the lands front onto and are oriented towards an arterial or a collector street, as identified on map 4B, or are accessed by a private road connected to an arterial or collector street. 3, appropriate transition from lands planned for and occupied by ground-related built forms can be achieved as per the Section 3 policies of this plan. And 4, servicing availability can be confirmed by the city. Go ahead, Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. Actually.
Sorry, Councillor Morales, yep.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. First of all, this is a two-sided thing. Through you, I believe you, through the move of the motion and possibly the city clerk, could you separate this motion? And specifically, why is the first section, I have a direct and real pecuniary interest. The second motion, if I were to just let this go in one, would actually prevent me from voting on something that affects Ward 9 quite significantly. 1/3 of the expense per take are in Ward 9, and for me to have no voice for 1/3 of the impacted area is it just, I personally feel it shouldn't be lumped together. So that is my first question, and then I have clarification questions to see if I need to declare pecuniary interest in the first one.
Okay, so Councillor Harvey, if you're willing, we will deal with these matters separately. Is that all right?
That's fine, Mayor Lehman.
Yeah, you've introduced it, so you could speak to what's coming, but we'll deal with them in order. So Councillor Morales, I believe you want to declare on the first one, or you had a question?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Lehman. I don't know through who. I think I might start with the motion, but I also want some staff feedback on this. I am not debating the content, I'm debating the intent of the wording, because to myself, and it's a great opportunity to know exactly what's being proposed. So, Councillor Harvey, in just plain language, does the motion, the first section of your motion, does it affect 2.6.1.3 C? Because if it affects 2.6.1.3 C, that is development in historic neighborhoods. If it affects that section, then I do have a real and direct pecuniary interest. If the language, because I saw some language that said words such, and I'm quoting here, unless otherwise specified in the plan. So if it does affect C, I cannot vote on it. If it doesn't affect C, if C remains intact, then I don't have a pecuniary interest on that. So I'm just wondering a bit on the language, because it speaks to reducing it to 3 unless it's said somewhere else, in which case shall be no more than 4 stories. Could I get some clarity on that?
Councillor Harvey, are you able to answer Councillor Morales' question?
I think I can confidently answer it. However, I think it's probably best that we get the true clarification from Ms. Banfield.
Ms. Banfield.
I do believe that it will affect them.
Yeah, Ms. Banfield.
Through your Mayor Lehman to Councillor Morales, it is a citywide proposal that is, the previous language said up to 4 stories, and this language is clarifying that 3 stories would be the standard, and it could be higher if the zoning bylaw reflected that, but in any case wouldn't be no higher than 4 stories, but it is intended to be across the municipality.
Perfect, thank you, Ms. Banfield. Through you, Mayor Lehman, as such, I'd like to declare a real and direct pecuniary interest on this amendment as the street Duckworth on which my family and I own property. This amendment would see the reduction in max potential height if this amendment were to pass, having a real and direct impact on my family. As such, I will be removing myself from this vote for as long as the amendment has a real and direct financial impact on my family.
Madam Clerk, has Councillor Morales' conflict been recorded?
Yes, Mayor Lehman, it has.
Okay, let's move on with debating the proposed amendment. Councillor Harvey, if you could introduce it.
Great, thank you, Mayor Lehman. Obviously, we've separated it, but I'm going to speak a little bit to the second piece too, because that's why they were tied together. So this is a similar amendment to the one that I had last week, worded a little differently. And obviously, I raised some concerns last week about how our collectors and arterial roads were being lumped together when it comes to the height. And that's why this amendment's coming forward again. And the reason that I've lumped in the other piece is because what we're doing is we're actually adding height and density into the annex lands, which is a clean slate that will not have any impact on our current residents. And that's where we've been seeing a lot of issues and what I would say turmoil with our residents is when these developments come forward and they're much higher and denser than what the residents in the area believe fit into that area. And I know there's been several around the city that I don't disagree with the residents. So this is not to restrict the height. However, instead of just changing the language, instead of up to 4 stories, now it's up to 3 stories. However, it still doesn't negate the fact that they can go 4 as long as it's approved through the zoning bylaw. And the reason for this is we've seen in the past certain applicants, certain applications, certain planning firms around this city that seem to always push the buttons when it comes to height and density around the city. And this is to bring a little bit more level to the playing field instead of having it at 4, because in some of our areas, 4 just wouldn't be acceptable and 3 would be a lot more appropriate. So that this is still basically accomplishing the same thing with the previous wording would. However, it's not leaving the ceiling at 4. And it's in some areas, it is a lot more appropriate to go 3. However, it's not shutting the door to 4. And that's where I think, again, it provides a little more flexibility for our staff and for us as council to be able to determine what's appropriate in these different areas instead of the blanket approach that this new official plan has taken. Because I don't think treating all areas of the city the same, because especially in our historic neighborhoods, that's truly where I have the biggest concern, because the likelihood of a developer coming and buying a house on Marcellus or a couple of houses on Mapleton to try and build a 4-story, let's say, stacked towns is extremely unlikely. I was just talking to one of my residents who just sold their house for $400,000 over asking. And that's the market we're in right now. So it's just not feasible. However, you get into some of the older areas where you might have older homes that may or may not be in the greatest condition. Well, those are going for a lot cheaper. And that's where we're probably going to see developers coming in and buying up some of these older areas. And the prime example I use is Burton Avenue. Burton Avenue is predominantly comprised of 2-story older historic homes. And this policy would allow a 4-story structure to be built beside them, even with the 2-story differential policy that's added just for those historic neighborhoods. That's where I have my concern. And I know from talking to people that live in that area, they share the same concern. We heard from Ms. Colbatch tonight, who spoke a little bit about that particular issue. And like, I mean, this isn't me looking out for a Ward 7 issue. This is me looking out for a historic neighborhood issue, because I really think if this moves forward in its current form, that's who's going to feel the impact, not our suburban wards. So anyway, I hope members have had a chance to think about things since last week, because I think this is a little bit more reasonable plan, especially too with the height that we may or may not be approving with the lowering of the heights. We're increasing it exponentially in the annex lands, because right now it's at 6 stories, and the next amendment after this, because of the separation, would allow up to 12.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Harvey. Councillor Natalie Harris.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. I love the second part. So I'm happy that we divided it. I'll speak to the first part again. And again, this is a lot of personal education that's been happening to me with respect to where I've had to move and looking into prices and costs of everything. So costs of how to buying a home, renting a home, buying land, etc. So not only are our home prices exponentially higher, land prices are exponentially higher. So with that being said, if a builder comes in and is restricted to the 3 stories, I think maybe there's some opportunities to broaden our design and the way we design things and make the 3.5 where the basement it's bright and it's still another floor, and we'd still be making it so it's not a towering building beside these areas, but you know, and of course it would be on an individual basis. If we're talking about a historical home on Burton, etc., then we would be addressing these things with respect to that. But again, my concern is more of the blanket statement about it and how it might deter builders from saying, well, if we can only do 3 stories here, and the cost of the land is X, and we need to do 3.5, maybe 4, we're going to go somewhere else. And again, when we need more product out there to help with the affordability, more buildings, more space, more homes for people. I've just had a rude awakening, to be honest, over the last week. And again, I sympathize and I understand what Councillor Harvey's saying, because being a Ward 6 councillor, I get a lot of people that reach out to me and don't want you know, an increase in density and don't want an increase in height. And a lot of times they don't want trees to be cut down too. But if we don't go higher, then we have to go out. So we need to maybe trust what the OP is saying here, and especially with how big our city needs to grow. So I love the second part. I just, in my heart, can't say yes to this first one as a blanket statement. I would definitely be willing to talk to Councillor Harvey about certain roads that he has in mind, like last week. But that's where my thoughts are with respect to this right now.
Other comments on the amendment? Councillor Riepma and then Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is an interesting approach, and it's a one that I think reaches a real compromise and is probably good for every neighborhood in the city. I think in and I'll just speak for Ward 1 for a minute. But we have a lot of areas on these streets that are bungalows. And if you put a 4-story building beside that, it'll be out of character and out of scale. And that's the issue. I think that if you build a 2-story beside it or a 3-story, you'd be a lot closer in scale. And you can provide affordable and higher density at that level, well designed with smaller units. And I think that's how we get there. And I think that Councillor Harris suggests that this is a blanket across the city. And in some ways it is. But I think the nice thing about Councillor Harvey's amendment is that it leaves the door open for 4 stories. It allows you to take a look at your zoning bylaw and say, yes, in this case, it does fit. And I think, you know, when it comes right down to it, that's what we are really trying to do, is to create a community where new development fits in to the existing neighborhoods. And that way we get a much more cohesive community that works really well at a higher density. I mean, just think about it. We already permit second suites, and that's sort of a blanket across the city. You know, we could double our population by doing that if every house did it. And there's certainly no thinking that they would. But there are a lot of opportunities for increasing density and increasing opportunities for people. And I think we really need to let the official plan do what it needs to do, and that is to permit these things to happen and give us the opportunity to regulate them well and properly. So thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Riepma. Councillor Thompson.
Thanks, Mayor Lehman. Through you to, I have an amendment to the amendment.
All right, fire away.
So that section 2.6.13A be amended by adding or arterial after the words of local. And at the end of the paragraph, with the exemption of a section of Mapleview Road from town line to ESSA, unless otherwise specified in the zoning bylaw, which is at the end of it, and I can speak to that.
We do need that written out. Have we got that circulated? Councillor Thompson, is that with the clerk?
Yes, Mayor Lehman.
She's got
I'm
it.
sorry,
Okay.
I thought it was sent. We were going back and forth.
Oh,
it was.
Yeah, I do see the email there, but I don't have the wording. I don't think. Oh, no, I do.
That's
if
about
that was
15
confirmed.
down.
Yeah, no kidding. Okay, so we have an amendment to the amendment. And that is to replace the reference to the 3-story in Councillor Harvey's amendment and replace it with the following. That section 2613A be amended to add or arterial after the words onto a local, with the remainder of the paragraph staying the same, and in B, that the word arterial be removed and the following words be added to the end of the paragraph, with the exception of the section of Mapleview Road from town line to ESSA, or otherwise, or unless otherwise specified in the zoning bylaw, and in which case shall be no more than 4 stories. Councillor Thompson, do you want to explain how that works?
Yep. So Mayor Lehman, like just looking at this, and I had issue with the whole amendment as I did last week, as I voted against it. I just think, you know, we've talked about today with the arterial roads being the reason for intensification, you know, transit and the walkability of communities. And that's why, like, arterial roads are most suited for the density. So that's why I wanted to remove, I don't think that we should interfere with the form build on arterial roads, you know, and, you know, to Councillor Riepma's comment, you know, with good design, you can have, you know, more density, but, you know, we've tried to already change the densities in other amendments. So I feel that they both work hand in hand. So I would like to leave the arterials off of this amendment. And I do understand, which I think is already captured in the OP with the height. 1 story can only go to 3 anyways, 2 story can go to 4. But, you know, if Councillor Harvey would be more comfortable with having it 3 blanket, then I can support that, but I don't want to have the arterial. And with the last section with the ESSA Road to town line, you know, we went through a very lengthy planning meeting, and, you know, it's, so we've already set precedent on that one section. So just continuing there. And I had a lot of conversation with Councillor, you know, Jim Harris, Deputy Mayor Ward, you know, obviously the seconder, Councillor Kungle. And there were some concerns, you know, Deputy Mayor Ward said, you know, Sunnydale, for example, across from the park, beautiful lots, bungalows, that a 4-story probably would change the character of that neighborhood. And that's why, you know, collectors, locals are all remaining, but the arterial is not. So that's my reason for the amendment, looking for a compromise and some commonalities around the table.
Okay, on the amendment to the amendment. Councillor Morales, you were conflicted out of the original amendment.
Correct. So
We're on an amendment to that amendment. You don't need to declare again.
I'm just wondering if my conflict still exists, and I just wanted to ask the director of planning.
We're on the amendment to the matter that you're conflicted on.
Okay.
So you're
Perfect.
I'm
automatic already. Perfect. Thank you very much.
Okay. On the amendment to the amendment, discussion, comments, questions. Councillor Natalie Harris.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Lehman. Just a quick question to Councillor Thompson, so I'm making sure I'm interpreting this right. I'm kind of getting jumbled. Okay, so basically this would just allow for Mapleview Road from Town Line to ESSA or otherwise specified by, so it would allow for those areas to have that rule as per what Councillor Harvey said last week as well. Is that right? But it wouldn't be the whole city, it would just be that stretch. Am I understanding that right?
Through you, Mayor Lehman.
Councillor Thompson.
So what it is that all arterials across the city would not be affected by the height. So we're actually leaving it to proposals to come forward. And then that section, because that section of Mapleview is actually an arterial. So because of the last planning meeting and stuff, that's why I've included that one little section to basically continue with the council decision on that one application.
Perfect. That's what I was thinking. I just wanted to make sure. That's great. Thank you. And I am in favor of that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Harris. Other comments on the amendment to the amendment? Councillor, I think I saw Harvey first, then Harris, then Congo. Go ahead, Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. I'm not overly crazy about it, but I guess I'll support it. It's middle ground here, and it obviously does protect the biggest thing that was part of my concern in my own area, because we've already made a decision on that one particular application along Mapleview. So it still does protect council's decision on that, which I'm happy with. And I guess with the arterial, I guess I'll take it as a compromise, because I don't think we're probably going to have enough support around the table to go all the way here. So I'll bat in 50. I'll take it. Councillor Thompson, thanks for coming to some compromise here, and hopefully enough members of council will at least support this.
Good stuff, Councillor Harvey. Thanks for that. Next, I have Jim Harris and then Councillor Kungle. Councillor Jim.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Lehman. And I do appreciate having speaking with Councillor Thompson about this. It's certainly a tension point, and I'm glad to hear Councillor Harvey came to his senses about newer streets like Marcellus and Mapleton not being included in this type of height risk, because it makes no sense. But I do appreciate his concern for Burton Avenue. I think, although nothing's happening on Burton Avenue, as Burton transitioned into Yonge Street, as you might know, things do change. And so it is a compromise. And, the tension of height and density, sometimes we talk about the scale, and we've had these challenges, the infill with these infill developments. And is it always the height? Not always. Sometimes it's how it fits on the lot. And the height can be actually a way to reduce the impact of the building. So it's a fine line. So just kind of, blanketing height can be challenging. So I do like the compromise. I think we want to come to a situation where we're trying to manage density, we're trying to manage growth and affordability. So thank you, Councillor Thompson, for bringing this forward, and Councillor Congo, I will support this. Thank you.
Mayor Lehman, can we get the vote, please? 10 a.m. And I think we've got consensus here.
Yeah, I actually agree with you, Councillor McCann. I'd like to call the question. We have several more amendments to deal with, councillors. I don't want to cut off people from speaking. Councillor Congo, you did indicate, but if it's all right, I'd like to call the question on this. It's an amendment to the amendment. Okay. Those in favor of the amendment to the amendment, please indicate. Any opposed? None. That carries unanimously on the original amendment. And it is just the first paragraph of the two that Councillor Harvey had introduced. Further discussion? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question on the amendment as amended. Those in favor? And oppose? Sorry, Councillor Natalie Harris, sorry. Are you trying to speak or?
I'm confused. We're on this first section still, and it is.
So this one is
just with Councillor Thompson's amendment.
No, now we're back to Councillor Harvey's original amendment.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. I'll call the question again. Those in favor, please indicate. And opposed? 2. So that does carry as well. On the second paragraph of that amendment, which we're now going to deal with, we're dealing with them separately. This one, Councillor Harvey did introduce it. I will just touch base again to talk about it, and then Councillor Harvey, you can speak to it. This is to permit up to 12 stories in the designated greenfield areas, with subject to certain conditions, and that's set out in 1 through 4 of Councillor Harvey's amendment here. So, Councillor Harvey, did you wish to speak to this piece of the amendment or this next paragraph?
Just very quickly, Mayor Lehman, because I did touch on it when we were dealing with the first piece of it. But this is to increase some height and density into the annex lands, because if you look at the annex lands were planned several years ago, and we're in different times now, and this is to get some more height and density into the annex lands. It's a clean slate, and it's far more appropriate to be pushing height and density into a clean slate than it is to our built boundaries and infill projects. So I think this will actually accomplish, if in fact the developers do start building some taller buildings, because right now the highest thing is 6 stories, we'll actually increase our number of units available, opposed to what the previous amendment may have accomplished.
Okay, thanks for that, Councillor Harvey. On this amendment, Councillor Morales.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. I'll be supporting the amendment. The only thing I'll just bring to the attention of my fellow colleagues is, if you guys look at the map, I don't want to ask the clerk to put it up, because I'm just looking at it here. Mapleview Drive East is covered by this green field. So if this amendment passes, Ward 9's Mapleview and Ward 10's Mapleview will see up to 12 stories, which is a very different reality than other sections of Mapleview. I'm personally okay with that. Ward 9 needs to support growth. We have a transit hub of the GO station in there. We need to make the tough decisions politically. If that ends up being a political consequence to me, that's me doing my job on that one. I just want to bring to the attention that specifically, and this is nothing other than how the map is, by the way. This wasn't done on purpose. This is just how the map is. It doesn't include Mapleview Drive West in Appendix 2, and it doesn't in Ward 9. And I'm okay with this one. I just want to note, obviously, that as we take into consideration the Watson report, and we need to create density to support roads and infrastructure and growing sustainably, and making sure that it doesn't kind of get out of hand for the whole city. If this amendment passes, has the possibility, not everyone's building 12 stories, but has the possibility that Ward 10 and Ward 9 are pulling their huge significant fair share and then some, which I personally, I'm supportive of it in Ward 9, and I'd love to see some more of this density specifically around the GO station.
Thanks, Councillor Morales. I would just note in the amendment that there are significant high density areas designated. This amendment does not deal with those, such as the area around the GO station. This is dealing with some of the other areas in the secondary plan areas. Other comments on the amendment? Okay, I am going to support this, and would have supported the last one, or did support the last one as well, though my vote wasn't needed. in part because I think Councillor Harvey came back here with an amendment that attempted to, in a way, more than compensate for the number of potential lost units. Similar to in the budget, when we're proposing to increase a cost, it's best to take one out. Council makes these tough choices, and in the midst of a housing crisis, I think the right approach to reducing a density in the plan is to offset it with an increase elsewhere, so that we're not making net reductions overall to what is possible. So I appreciated this approach. I would have struggled with the first amendment if it hadn't been for Councillor Thompson's amendment. And I think, the effect of that was it actually reduced even further the change. And so it wouldn't be hard with this amendment that's on the floor right now to more than make up for what we might lose on some collector roads in older neighborhoods with only one or two changes to built form in the secondary plan areas. And I think Councillor Harvey's quite right. When you plan for the density at the outset and you build it at the outset, it is immeasurably easier for everyone to accept it as part of their community than when you are trying to retrofit it. So I appreciate the approach. And I'll call the question on the amendment. Those in favor of this amendment, please indicate. I am as well. That makes it unanimous. Thanks, members of council.